Hi, my name is Julie Ann Link, and welcome to the Music Link. This week on the Let's Link project, I'd like to welcome the principal bassoonist of the Houston Grand Opera and the second bassoonist of the Houston Ballet Orchestra, Amanda Swain. Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
For everyone watching, Amanda and I met about 10 years ago at the Meg Quigley Vivaldi Competition and Symposium in Oberlin, Ohio, where Amanda won the first prize. Amanda, can you please share an overview of who you are and what you do as a professional musician?
Sure. So like Julie said, I play principal bassoon, Houston Grand Opera, and second in Houston Ballet. This is my 9th season with both groups. I got the job back in 2012. And I also am the adjunct instructor of bassoon at Sam Houston State University. This is my 2nd year there, which has been really fun. Those are my main musical activities. I'm also the vice president of the Regional Orchestra Players Association, and I serve on the executive board of Local 65699 of the American Federation of Musicians.
Wow. Amanda, where did you grow up? And are you ever able to get back and visit?
Yeah, I actually grew up in the Houston area. I'm from Friendswood, Texas, and all my family is still here, so I don't really have to travel very far. I have 2 sisters. They're both about 20 minutes in either direction, and my parents live about 30 minutes away, so we're all right here, which makes my folks very happy.
Yeah. Nice. How did you first get introduced to music and playing the bassoon?
So I first got introduced to music when I was about 7, and my mom put me in piano lessons, which was great. I loved it from the beginning, and I played all the way through college, through undergrad, took lessons all the way through undergrad, which was fun, and I still sit down and play occasionally. For bassoon, band directors came to my elementary school when I was in 5th grade and did like their recruiting spiel. And they were introducing the instruments to all of us. And when they came to the bassoon, I remembered it because we had studied it in 1st grade with Peter and the Wolf. And I really remembered the sound really vividly. And then when the band director said, to play bassoon, you have to have like an A average and have 2 years of piano and like good grades. And I was like, well, that's me, sign me up. And so I put bassoon as my #1 choice, and I handed it in, and they said, okay. And yeah, I've been playing bassoon ever since. And I'm really grateful to that band director who I'm friends with now, for letting me play bassoon and getting me started on the right path. That's how I got introduced, yeah.
Do any of your family members play music?
Well, my sisters don't professionally, but they played in band in high school. We were all in band together. And then my mom is a church pianist, and she has been for as long as I remember. And she just recently, over the last few years, started teaching piano lessons. And now she has like a giant piano studio with like 60 kids in it or something, which sounds overwhelming, especially because they're all like younger to kind of, middle kids. And she does a great job. She's super organized and loves teaching music. And I think her instruction comes from a place of love and wanting to pass that on to children. And so that was an influence growing up for sure.
Did you always know that you wanted to pursue music as a career?
Pretty much. From about 8th or 9th grade, I went to a summer festival in Houston called AFA, and it was a 6-week like orchestra intensive sort of program, and I got dropped into it because they needed a bassoonist. And my band director, I was going into 9th grade, he's like, well, she'll either sink or swim, but here you go. And so they tossed me in, and it was overwhelming. They put Rachmaninoff's symphonic dances in front of us on the first day, like sight reading. I didn't really know how to read tenor clef, so that was but after that summer, I remember talking to the clarinet professor, and he said specifically, only go into music if you can't imagine doing anything else. And I basically made the decision at that point as a freshman in high school that this is what I wanted to do. And so everything, from then on was about achieving that goal to have a career in music, and specifically to play with opera and ballet. That's on my college entry, like essays. I put that I wanted to play with a repertory company like Houston Grand Opera, Houston Ballet. So I put that thought out into the universe, when I was 17 or 18 years old, and it worked. So I think, having intention and purpose, even from a young age, is possible. Not everyone's story is like that, to have that sort of intense tunnel vision about a goal from such a young age, but it was for me. And I don't regret making that decision at a young age, because I think it kept me driven through, some tough times.
Yeah.
Which you have to have if this is something you want to do.
Yes. Amanda, where did you go to school, and what were the music programs like for you?
So I went to the University of Texas at Austin, which was a lot of fun. I had applied to a lot of other schools and all over the country, and had a lot of options when it came to picking my school, but I thought I really connected with Kristen Jensen at the University of Texas, and her approach to playing bassoon, and also seeing how her students were doing. And I'm like, okay, I think this is where I need to go. And it was more affordable, close to my family. And even though I went to one football game my entire time at UT. So like the appeal of the campus for some people is a big thing, and like the big school feel. But just being in the music building, even auditioning there, and it felt like a small environment because of, being so focused in one program. But it was an amazing undergrad experience and really set me up for success. But after that, I went to Northwestern and studied with Chris Millard, which was also a great experience, and felt like I really got to focus on getting ready for a career as a performing musician, which was really important.
What have you learned about the music industry since graduating and working professionally?
Probably that I had to think about it for a second. My first thought actually goes to unionism and being in a union, because that's not something we really learn about in school. And, we're taught so much as the performance aspect, and winning an audition, and freelancing, entrepreneurship, but we're not really taught about the union, which is the American Federation of Musicians in the United States and Canada. And there are plenty of other music unions all over the world. But I found out really quickly how important it was to have a strong contract in place, a contract that's collectively bargained, which means the group of people, are represented by some, to make sure that we're all covered fairly, that we all get fair wages, that we have a safe working environment. And it's such an important part of being in an orchestra, having that representation, and participating in the process. I think that's been one of my biggest lessons learned over the last couple of years, and something that I feel really passionate about, getting involved with your local union in whatever industry you're in, not just music, and participating in the process to make sure everyone gets a fair shake.
Great advice. Did you ever consider changing careers outside of music?
Not really. The only time when I started to doubt it was the year after grad school, before I got my jobs. And I was working a couple different things, and I was playing in the Chicago Civic Orchestra, not taking lessons, and taking auditions, of course. And I was doing well. I kept advancing to semis and finals, got runner-up for a few things. And after a couple of those, it starts to feel really disheartening, as I'm sure we've all experienced if you've ever taken an audition, which if you grew up in the States and you've been doing region band since you were, 11 years old, chances are you know what the feeling is when you don't do as well as you expect. But when it's your livelihood that's on the line, it starts to really impact your self-confidence, your faith in what you're doing, that you're going the right direction. And I remember calling my mom after an audition and saying, "Mom, I don't know if I can do this anymore." And, and she talked me through it. And I think the next thing I actually got a New World Symphony spot. And then the next thing was Houston Grand Opera and Ballet, and I got that. And and it worked out. And so, but that was my moment. That was a little bit of my crisis of faith, I guess, after so many auditions. But you persevere if it's something you really want, and I did. So I did.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Amanda, can you share more about your teaching career?
Yeah. So I never had planned on doing a lot of teaching. I did some in undergrad. I had 20 middle school students. That was the most students I'd ever had. I wanted 10 and ended up with 20 because it's Texas, and Texas has, you know, a really good music education program in our public schools. And so I had 20 kids then, and then I didn't teach it all through grad school in Chicago. And I've had one or two private students here or there in Houston. It's not something I've really focused on. I did do a semester at the University of Texas, subbing in for Kristen Jensen when she took a sabbatical, which was really cool. And I really enjoyed getting to work with like some of the best undergrads in the country because she sets them up so well. So filling in for her was a dream for a semester. A lot of driving back and forth, you know, but it worked really well since Houston and Austin are only about 2.5 hours apart. So I did that for a semester. That was 2 or 3 years ago. And now I am, you know, teaching at Sam Houston and working on building the studio there. Currently have 5 students. So if anyone wants to come study with me, let me know. And no, but it's been a lot of fun. It's a great undergrad program. There's a really big focus on music education. And so I always try to incorporate that into, you know, lessons in studio class, making sure that they know, you know, asking them, how would you fix this? How would you tell someone else to fix this? What are your approaches? You know, and making sure they're really able to vocalize their critical thoughts in a way that's impactful yet kind, which I think is important for educators. But that's a little bit about what I do for teaching. I don't have any other private students right now, which I don't mind. So
yes, balancing everything, Amanda. You're amazing. Can you share more about your chamber music playing?
Yeah. So early on, like in grad school, I was part of an amazing woodwind quintet called the City of Tomorrow. If you haven't heard of them, please go check them out because they're an amazing group. I'm not part of them anymore since I moved to Houston, but we won Fish Off competition, which is a big competition in the States, chamber music competition. And it's an amazing group that focuses on contemporary wind repertoire. So you won't be hearing a lot of Rika or Donzi or anything like that, which is great to have new repertoire, which is something that's really important, you know, that we continue to have new and exciting rep and explore the dimensions of a wind quintet, which are vast and uncharted because there's so many things you can do with 5 different instruments that are all built totally differently. And I love that challenge about it. I think a lot of people look down on woodwind quintet as like, oh, woodwind quintet, because it's so hard to make it sound, you know, good. It's so hard to get a homogeneous sound. But I think putting the time into projects like that is so rewarding. And I loved that part of my career. I don't really do a lot of chamber music now, just the occasional gig that pops up. I don't have a group I play with regularly, but I think it's really important to explore it at some point in your career, whether it's in school or afterwards, and just getting together to play with friends occasionally is really valuable also. It doesn't have to be a paying, you know, chamber music gig, but having people you can play with and make music with is a lot of fun and takes the pressure off a little bit as well.
Amanda, is there any advice or thoughts that you can share about playing in the opera and the ballet orchestra pit?
Yeah. So both jobs are different than playing in like a symphony orchestra on stage. I'll start with ballet. Probably the biggest piece of advice I could give for playing in a ballet orchestra is that the last note of a piece is never where you think it is. So you always have to watch the conductor because inevitably, like the dancer does some sort of big leap at the end and you have to time the last note. And everyone who's new in the orchestra will make that mistake at least once of playing the last note in time. So that's my piece of advice for ballet orchestra. Yeah, watching the conductor so that you know what's going on with the dancers because you can't see them. And then for opera, for playing principal in opera, I think knowing the score is imperative, knowing what the singers are doing, knowing what they're singing about, knowing who you're playing with, which is, of course, applies to ballet or any other sort of music, is really important, and can really come in handy if things start to go off the rails a little bit, which sometimes they do in live performance. You know, a singer misses a cue, or something weird happens in one section of the orchestra and the conductor gets divided with their attention. And if you know the score, if you know where the singer comes in, then you always know where you are. If you know other people's parts, you're never going to get lost, in theory. It just really helps to have the roadmap in your head, and it helps to mark in things in your part, you know, before you ever get to the first rehearsal, of course. So having the score to any sort of piece that you're working on and knowing it is really important. As far as playing in a pit goes, I mean, you're kind of at the mercy of the singers, of course, with balance. You never play really full out unless the singers aren't singing. And if it's a whole orchestra against one soprano, you know, you just have to keep that in mind. Or if you're playing, you know, Verdi, it needs to be lighter. Just knowing that forte is not like a Wagner forte or a big romantic forte. It's, you know, a lighter forte. And being sensitive to that, I think, is important.
Wow. Is there a favorite concert experience that you would like to share about?
I mean, there's so many, of course, because I love what I do and they're all kind of favorites. But I'll give a couple that stand out. One was a dress rehearsal experience when I was in undergrad. We were doing Dialogue of the Carmelites, which is an opera by Poulenc. And I was playing contrabassoon. I was a freshman. I didn't know what I was doing really in terms of opera or contra. And at the end of one of the acts, there's like a big rest before a big C minor chord with like a low C on the contra. And I totally blew it and played that low C real confident in that rest. And then none of the winds came in on the last note because they were all dying laughing. I don't blame them. I mean, I was mortified, but looking back on it, like, if you're gonna make a mistake, make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess as far as like another like more positive concert experience, probably with here in Houston, I'd probably say getting through the Ring Cycle and like that last Götterdämmerung, the last opera of Wagner's Ring Cycle. At the very end of it, it was really emotional because you go through this journey with these characters, with the story, with these people that you play it with, where you all suffer through these really long operas to get to the end of the story. And it was just magical to have that whole project and to say, I've played the Ring Cycle, you know, and my lips are still attached after all that playing. Was really memorable, I think.
Could you tell me about a memorable audition experience or competition?
Yeah. Actually, getting these jobs that I have now has a bit of a story, and I've told it before, I think, to some people. I told it on the Meg Quigley on a summer series thing earlier, but I'll tell it again because it's kind of worth telling a story with a lot of things that went wrong before something went right, which is fine. So I had booked my ticket to come down to audition in Houston several months in advance, of course, on Southwest. And then I had to rebook my flight because my grandfather had passed away and I needed to just juggle some things around a little bit differently. And I ended up booking it on the wrong day, and I didn't realize it until the day before when I went to check in. And then I had to call Southwest, and they're like, well, you can pay an extra $200, which I really didn't have as a grad, like just out of grad school. So I went ahead and did it, bought the ticket, and then I had a concert that night with the Chicago Symphony, which was amazing. And I got a notification that night that my flight had been canceled the next morning. And so they had pushed it later. So I emailed the personnel manager for the Houston Ballet and it's like, can you give me the last slot of the prelims? And they said yes. So I got on the slightly later flight. I almost missed that flight because I got lost on the way to Midway Airport from Evanston. I was driving. Normally I would take public transportation, but it was too early. So I get to the airport. I basically run onto the flight. I get, down to Houston. My mom picks me up from the airport and drives me to the audition. I was the last person in the prelims, made it through. And then of course I was the first person in the semis. Like we drew numbers and I drew number 1, and that's just luck of the draw. And the personnel manager was like, okay, you ready? I'm like, well, no, but okay. So I got a few minutes and then went in. It was all a blur. I was running on like 4 hours of sleep. And then after the second round, the guy came out and said, Amanda, you've won both jobs.
Wow.
And I think it was such a blur of a day, but I had prepared really well for that audition. And it was during a time when I was working day jobs in Chicago and playing with the Chicago Civic Orchestra. And I didn't have a lot of time to practice. So I was maybe getting in 30 minutes to an hour a day, maybe. And I think I spent that time really well. And I made sure I was making a lot of recordings, doing run-throughs for people, making sure I knew things backwards and forwards with the limited time that I had. And it just worked out. And I couldn't imagine being in a better job now. Like I love these jobs so much. I love being in Houston. So it all worked out in the end.
Could you share a bit more on how to cope with music performance anxiety?
Yeah, so nerves have never been a bad thing for me. I think everyone has to figure out how to deal with nerves in a way that works for them, and that's a really individual approach. For me, it's about taking that energy and utilizing it in a way that's positive, being able to still take deep breaths and try to think about my hands being calm and not shaky. And I don't know, just using that energy to be aware and alert, using that adrenaline that you get when you're nervous to focus more, to know that it's there to help you in these situations and not hinder you. And I think sometimes nerves get a bad rap, but I think it's just part of our body's mechanism to get us to focus on what's coming up, and that can be really useful. And so I try to view them as useful nerves, and I find they help me kind of just get focused for a performance or a big solo or whatever it is coming up.
Can you share a bit more about, prevention in any music-related injuries and how to, be aware of anything coming up?
Yeah. I was really lucky with my undergrad teacher in particular. Kristen Jensen was very big on like Alexander technique and being relaxed and playing ergonomically, and making sure you were avoiding tension, not doing weird things with your shoulders or holding tension in your arms, which was great to always have those reminders and those subtle touches of like, I really see that your shoulders are coming up here, just little touches to help you remember to play relaxed, and that'll come across in your playing when your body is relaxed. But as far as, I've never had any actual injuries, but I think I've come close twice. One of them, I was a senior at UT and we were doing Hansel and Gretel, which for anyone who's played that opera, it's a blow. It's just, you play the entire time in the tenor register constantly. It's tough. And I remember my face felt so stiff. Like I thought I had injured my face, and maybe I did. I don't know, but it was a terrible feeling. And I haven't had it since, because I think I try to take really good care of my mouth, and I play on reeds that are light enough to play long operas on. And I use products like Chop Saver that have arnica in them with anti-inflammatory properties. I take Advil if I need to after a long opera, just if things are feeling really bad, warm washcloth, something that, gets, swelling, or even ice sometimes. Sometimes I'll do ice if I'm really feeling bad.
Yes.
But find ways to take care of your face to prevent that sort of tension. And then the other time is we were doing Electra. And it's only a 90-minute opera, but you don't stop the entire time. It's so many notes and so many key changes and meter changes. You just can't put your instrument down. And I remember having like a feeling of tension in my forearm, and I'd never felt that before. And it was just from holding the instrument for so long without ever putting it down. But, making sure I was then stretching afterwards and not overdoing it. And part of that healthy, preventing injury process also, I didn't word that very well, but that's okay. Warming up, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
Warming up is important because it really helps you. Not only does it get you mentally focused for a day of practice or a rehearsal or a performance, but physically, it's super important. Like, you wouldn't expect someone to really run a marathon just like right out of bed, you have to do something to kind of get your muscles ready. And so for me, it's about having a relaxed warm up, one where I don't necessarily have a lot of things that I'm like, I'm going to get this, and this accomplished during my warm up. No, for me, it's about getting relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
It's about feeling comfortable. It's about feeling like literal warmth in my face to get ready to play, whether it's for like an hour of practicing or a 4-hour opera. Like, warming up is how you prevent injury. And I very firmly stand by that. And if you're not doing daily warm-ups, it's important to incorporate them into your routine.
Could you share a bit more about your reed making style and techniques?
Yeah. So I've never, as anyone who knows me will know, I don't really talk a lot about my reeds. I don't really geek out over reed work or machinery or processes. I basically made the same style of reeds from the time I was a freshman in college when Kristen Timpson taught me how to make reeds. They haven't changed a whole lot, except when I got to grad school with Chris Millard. He doesn't, or didn't at the time, bevel. He didn't have a bevel in his reeds, and so I stopped beveling too, and it doesn't seem to make a difference in the way I make reeds, so I don't bevel. As far as my plan goes, I buy GSP cane, gouge shaped and profiled cane, because I have never had the desire to machine my own pieces, and I know the advantages to it. I know you get a lot more control, but I really love the cane that I get from Barton Cane. So check them out if you haven't. It's just amazing. It's consistent. I get really good reeds, and for me, that's so worth it, because we place such a high value on our reeds, and they kind of, make us feel like we're, doing well or not doing well. And if they're not good, we feel bad about ourselves, which is not how it should be, but how it is, for a lot of us. And I get good reeds with using Barton Cane. I make 50 reeds once or twice a year, usually twice a year. This year, probably only once a year. And then I just break them in as I need them. Mm-hmm. And that's my reed making philosophy. Always have reeds, have good reeds. That's I guess, and more seriously, having reeds in different stages of development, having some reeds that you've had for a while that are easy, having some that are middle of the road, and having brand new ones. Always having like a cycle, having a couple reeds you can rely on in your case, having some that are a little more wily and might need breaking in, variety is, I think, important in your reed case.
Could you share some important skills that we learn through music that apply to everyday life?
I think that this is, kind of a broad question, but I think discipline is probably the number one thing that would apply to anything else you do in life. Having the, setting goals, I guess, would be another one, which you have to be disciplined about in both setting them and then fulfilling them. And staying organized within those goals, making sure the work you're doing is going towards those goals. That's some general ones, I guess.
Nice. Is there any advice that you can share for musicians just starting out their music careers?
Yeah, listen to more music. I find so often that students don't take the time to actually listen to music. And it's like, well, if you're going into this for your career, you should enjoy listening to music. I always give my students an active listening assignment during semester breaks, where they have to put away their phones and devices, no screens, not while they're doing anything else, and they just have to listen to a piece of music, like a symphony or something. Just sit there and listen without doing anything else. It's something I love to do that. I think it's so important to just enjoy music for what it is without worrying about, your own intonation or your reeds or
Yes.
whatever it is. Knowing that this is the ultimate goal, playing music, enjoying music, loving music. So listening is a really big one. I guess another piece of advice would be score study, which I mentioned earlier. I think sometimes students don't get into that until later, but it really is important to always know how your part fits in with everyone else's, where you are in the story, what the chords are. I have a story from I was playing in the Chicago Symphony. I was playing second bassoon on Dvorak 8, which has a pretty good second bassoon part. And at the break during one of the rehearsals, Dale Clevenger, the former principal French horn of the Chicago Symphony, noted French horn player, lauded French horn player, came up to me and said, "You play very well, but always remember where you are in the chord," and walked away. And so that was a little eye-opening. So I went home that night and got out the score and really made sure I knew what was going on when I was playing in like a woodwind chorale sort of section, or when I was really the fundamental bass line, or just knowing where I needed to be. And the next day we came to rehearsal again and he comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Much better," and walked away again. So that's my Dale Clevenger story, but it was very productive and very useful. And I've taken that to heart ever since then. Always know where you are in the chord. And yeah, know your score, have a score, get a score. Yeah.
Great advice, Amanda. Who do you think I should interview next?
Definitely Chris Millard, my teacher from grad school. He's quite a character. He's brilliant, and he's one of the most generous people I think I've ever met, and that comes across in his teaching and how he relates to people. And he's funny, so he'd be a really good person, and I think people would enjoy hearing from him.
Wonderful. I'd love to reach out to Chris and interview him. Thank you so much, Amanda, for this interview. It's so nice to hear more about your life and career as a professional musician.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to you too.
Thank you, Amanda. For everyone tuning in, keep an eye out for new videos with great bassoon guests every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. On the Let's Link project, every guest interviewed here is hosting a free online Zoom panel discussion the following Sunday, Central Standard Time, and you can register for Amanda's session on the Music Link website. Please like, comment, and share any questions or feedback in the section below, and subscribe to this channel for new videos each week. Check out the Music Link Instagram and Facebook pages for more information too. The Music Link is a New Zealand-based online resource for people to share, learn, and connect. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video.